The city of Tarsus in modern Turkey is famous as the birthplace of the Apostle Paul, but Tarsus dates centuries earlier. As with most ancient sites, geography took center stage. The Cydnus River flowed through Tarsus to the Mediterranean Sea 10 miles south. North of the city stood the imposing Taurus Mountains, and Tarsus controlled all traffic that passed through the mountains to the interior of Asia Minor, as well as eastbound traffic to Mesopotamia. As a result, Tarsus established itself as a trade center as far back as the time of Abraham in 2000 BC. The ancient Hittites lived here during the time of the biblical judges, and because of the strategic location of the city, it changed hands with every world power that conquered the one before it. After Alexander the Great conquered Cilicia in 333 BC, he took a swim in the chilly waters of the Cydnus River and fell deathly ill afterward. He recuperated in Tarsus. During the days of the Roman Empire, Tarsus became the capital of the Roman province of Cilicia, and local Jews became Roman citizens. In 41 BC, Cleopatra of Egypt sailed up the Cydnus River to Tarsus in order to begin her infamous affair with Mark Antony. Today in Tarsus, this ancient gate is called Cleopatra's Gate because she supposedly entered the city through the gate. The Turkish name for the gate also refers to Cleopatra, but it isn't appropriate to translate. And it's even debatable whether or not the Egyptian queen ever entered the gate because the gate may date to the 2nd century AD, a couple hundred years after Cleopatra. Modern Tarsus has very little to show from ancient days, as the Tarsus of today covers the city of yesteryear. But archaeologists have uncovered this short stretch of a street in Tarsus that dates as early as the 2nd century BC, which means that Paul, or Saul of Tarsus, likely walked down this street on many occasions, as it was here when Saul was here. The paving stones are made of basalt, and the white curbstones of limestone. The ruins beside the road date to the Byzantine era in the 3rd or 4th centuries AD. Saul of Tarsus was born in this city around the beginning of the 1st century. He described his background in the book of Acts, chapter 22. I am a Jew, born in Tarsus of Cilicia, but brought up in Jerusalem, educated under Gamaliel, strictly according to the law of our fathers, being zealous for God. From the New Testament, we learn that Saul wrote and spoke fluent Greek, Hebrew, and Aramaic. As a Pharisee trained under the esteemed teacher Gamaliel, Saul was well versed in the Hebrew Scriptures, but he also knew the Greek poets. And because Saul, a Jew, was born in Tarsus, he was also a Roman citizen. To top it all, he zealously persecuted the followers of Jesus of Nazareth until the day that the resurrected Jesus Christ met Saul on the road to Damascus. Saul was converted to faith in Jesus, and Acts chapter 9 and Galatians chapter 1 outline his early movements. After Saul left Jerusalem, he met the risen Christ on the road just outside Damascus, and then Saul went to Arabia, though we don't know where, presumably to study and to receive more revelation about Jesus. Saul then returned to Damascus and escaped a plot to kill him. He journeyed to Jerusalem to meet with Peter and James, and then to Caesarea, from which Saul presumably sailed to Cilicia and his hometown of Tarsus. In Tarsus today, there's a section near the ancient street that is called the Well of St. Paul. There's nothing certain, but tradition points to this well as one that Saul would have drunk from when he lived here. The well is deep and the water is clear. Beside the well, glass covers what's considered to be the home of Saul. Again, there's no way to know for sure. The area around the house and the well has a small garden with walking paths. It's a nice place to ponder the years that Saul of Tarsus spent here before he began his missionary journeys. By the time Saul arrived back home in Tarsus in the fall of AD 37, he'd been a Christian a little more than 2 years. He would spend the next 5 years here at Tarsus, and the New Testament tells us nothing specific about what Saul did during those years in his hometown. Then out of the blue one day, Barnabas shows up and says he needs Saul's help in the growing ministry back in Antioch. So they left together, and Saul never slowed down for the rest of his life. After some time in Antioch, Barnabas and Saul traveled to Jerusalem for a council that met over issues of doctrine and salvation. They then returned to Antioch, and Barnabas and Saul, also called Paul, set out on their first missionary journey. On Paul's second missionary journey, he left Antioch with Silas and likely passed through this town called Adana. This Roman bridge dates to the 2nd or 6th century AD, and it shows the importance of Adana as a crossing for the Sehan or Sarus River. From here, they would have passed through Tarsus and then north along this road. This well-preserved Roman road is just north of Tarsus, and Paul would have walked it more than once in his journeys to proclaim Christ to the nations. The book of Acts never mentions Paul walking through Tarsus on his missionary journeys, but we know that he did because of the route Luke describes. This Roman road north of Tarsus was built in the century after Paul, but it was built over the road from Paul's day, a road that connected Tarsus with the churches of southern Galatia that Paul had visited on his first missionary journey. So it's almost certain that Paul and Silas would have walked this road on their way northwest to the churches of Galatia. Roman roads like this were everywhere in the Roman Empire. What Rome had built throughout the centuries to move armies and supplies, God used to allow the message of His gospel to spread quickly to the ends of the earth. The Greek language also was spoken by all, and so the New Testament was written in Greek, not in Old Testament Hebrew, in order to allow Jew and Gentile alike to understand the truth of the gospel. But the Lord's preparation was more than through roads and through language. God also prepared people, like Paul, by using his background as an essential part of God's plans for Paul's effectiveness in ministry. Paul's Roman citizenship surfaced again and again in his ministry. His mastery of the Hebrew Scriptures and the Greek language gave him the fluidity and ease to write many New Testament epistles. God used Paul's past to equip him for a unique future. On Paul's final missionary journey, he likely passed through Tarsus and walked along this road on his way to Ephesus. And then later to the church at Ephesus, he would write these words in Ephesians 2, verse 10. For we are His workmanship, created in Christ Jesus for good works, which God prepared beforehand so that we would walk in them. Think about the variety of your background, where you've lived, who you've known, your education, your upbringing, and your careers. How God has used the variety of experiences in ways you never imagined. That's not by accident. God planned your past for your future and for His glory.